Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Sicilian Corner podcast. My name is Mike, and behind the petition over here, making sure we all look good and sound good, is Brother Lou. How are you, Lou?
I'm doing okay.
Do you remember this guy?
Of course.
You know, it's been a year. It's already been a year.
It has been a year.
And
really?
you were around with us September of 23.
Been working with you again over a year.
It cost me, but yeah, he's here anyway. I had to make all kinds of promises. No,
All right.
I'm only kidding. Hey, listen, everybody. You know, we do a lot of shows. A lot of them are on the lighter side, and that's by design. There's so much bad news, and you know, I don't know where to begin. I mean, this country is pulling itself apart and everything else, and that's why we do the show, Lou.
Yep.
On the lighter side, which I do by design and you do by design. And it's a good thing. And I think it's very well received by our listening audience. And that's important. But today's show, everybody, this is important. I know I sent out quite a few notices to everybody. Lou's been on Facebook, and we talked about the show quite a bit. And gentleman sitting next to me is Dan DeBruyckere. And Dan you're president of Legacy Care, aren't you, Dan?
That's correct.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier off the year, and I'm a client, by the way, of Dan. I just want to bring that up. I have been for quite a few years, and it's probably been about 12 years, Lou, since I've been with Dan. And the growth that I have seen in his firm between it's incredible. Dan, I think when I started with you, I think there were only two lawyers besides yourself.
Yeah.
And now I see a picture, a gallery, and there's a few of them right there. And it's amazing how much growth your firm has had. And you know something, word of mouth, best advertising you can have. Best advertising. You know how many friends that I've sent your way, and I've done it from the bottom of my heart, because I believe in what he stands for. And that's what this show is all about. And, you know, estate planning, elder law, this guy, this is who you need to talk to, You've been practicing law, Dan, now, what, 28, 29 years?
Yeah, a little bit more than that.
A little bit more than that?
Yep.
All right. And, you know, you co-authored a book a few years ago.
That's
Is
correct.
that still around?
It is. We just did another edition because the tax law keeps changing. So we have to update it every few years with the changes in the tax law.
That must be a pain in the butt, because, you know, you get so used to doing something, and then all of a sudden there's a curve, a dip, and you got to stay up. You got to stay up with the times, you know. The Legacy Care, if you were to have a motto for Legacy Care, what would it be?
A motto? I would say that, you know, we provide peace of mind, and we get you to a level where you're comfortable with the plans you put in place to protect yourself and your family. Yeah.
The name of your book is called Protecting
Your Legacy.
Protecting Your Legacy and Why a Will is Not Enough.
That's correct.
That should be your mission statement, right? Right there and then. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, where you're from, where you were brought up?
Sure. I'm originally from Lawrence. My dad had a little grocery store in South Lawrence on Brookfield Street.
Oh, what's it?
Brookfield Street. It was called Luke's Market. And I actually grew up in that little grocery store. My dad was born in France, and my mom's both parents were Italian. One was born in Sicily, the other Naples. And so, my mother used to always tell me, and she was telling my kids, her grandkids, that you're 99% Italian. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Right?
And that's why you like Italian food so much.
I love Italian food, sure.
Yeah, who doesn't? That has to be the number one, I would think, the number one food in the world, Italian food? Yeah. Don't you think?
I would think so.
I would think so.
And especially in the Lawrence area, because there are so many different customs and traditions and
there were
types of Italian food.
There were so many different neighborhoods too.
Yeah.
When you grew up, I grew up in South Lawrence, by the way.
Yeah.
I grew up by the stadium.
Okay.
On Exeter Street, and they when they put the Veterans Housing Project in, all of a sudden there were like 500 families instantaneously moving in. And up until then, I was in an Irish stronghold. I mean, really, no names ended in vowel except ours. And then after they built the military housing, all of a sudden you got it's a nation. It's every nationality you could possibly. We all went to the John Breen Grammar School. What grammar school did you go to?
I went to Sacred Heart in South Lawrence.
I love that church. Those stairs were a killer, though.
I used to shovel those stairs when I was a kid. Yeah.
It's
Shoveling for God.
yeah, really. You know what I want to ask you? Oh, first of all, let me just say to our listeners, if you have a question, anything at all pertaining to what we're talking about today, please give us a call. 978-659-0072. I'm going to say it one more time. 978-659-0072. Dan, what I was going to ask you is your free seminars. What do people have to do to sign up for something like that? And you do quite a few of them now.
Sure. You can go online to our website.
Which is
www.dadlawoffices.com, like in David, Apple David. And that's just my initials. It had nothing to do with a tribute to my father, like a lot of people asked me. But the name of the website is dadlawoffices.com. And you can register there, or you can call the office at I don't call myself that often, but
Louis going to post it.
Yeah,
Louis is going to post it, Charlotte.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
These seminars, the information, because I had attended, I think 2 of them before I came to see you with Lucille.
Yeah, most people do. Most people come to one and they're amazed at how much new information they get, and then they come to another one.
And it gives you time to digest the information. You're sitting there taking notes, and then you go home and you can discuss it with your wife, your girlfriend, or whoever. And I can't say enough about your seminars, because you do give some great information. You really do. So that to me is absolutely incredible. And the staff that you have with you, I mean, everybody's so helpful and everything else. And I like it. And you have them all over. I mean, you got offices in Massachusetts and New Hampshire.
Yeah, we have 5 offices.
Oh, there's 5.
One in Salem, New Hampshire. One are in Nashua, New Hampshire. Then we have North Andover, Beverly, and Woburn.
So you can meet people in any one of those offices?
Correct.
Okay. So you're listening to us on. We have a caller.
Yep.
All right, caller, you're on the air.
Dan, go ahead.
Hello.
Hey, good morning, Mike. This is Dan.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. I had a question.
It's a good name, Dan.
Dan, I don't know if you've been listening, but this is Dan DeBruyckere, Attorney Dan DeBruyckere. And we're talking about, putting your estate in order. And, again, this is very, very important. And I'm glad you called in. You have a question for Mr. DeBruyckere?
Yes, sir, I do. It's specifically having to do with an irrevocable trust. I am one of 3 beneficiaries in an irrevocable trust set up by my father. The question I have, my siblings and I have reached a point where we're doing our own individual estate planning, and we're not 100% clear if one of us were to pass away in its current state, how things would pass on. So I guess my specific question would be, can I pass on my interest as a beneficiary of this trust to my heirs via a will?
So, first thing I want to say is, when you talk about a trust is nothing more than a contract. So it's the language inside the trust that tells you what you can or cannot do. So it's very important what the trust says. Having said that, most irrevocable trusts have a clause in there that's called a testamentary power of appointment. And what that means is that you can appoint your share, as you said, in your will by exercising your power to appoint testamentarily. But we'd have to look at the trust to see if your trust provided for that. The other thing too, Dan, is you should look at what we call the lapsing language in your beneficial gift, because just about all trust will say, I leave 20% of my trust to my son Daniel, but if he should die during the pendency of his beneficial subtrust, that his share shall go to XYZ. Usually it's to his descendants, but again, we'd have to look at the language of the trust.
Oh, I understand. That's kind of what I figured, but if nothing more, I guess we understand that we're going to have to get it looked into.
How old are you, Dan? How old are you, Dan?
I'm 64.
So, okay, good. This is a good time to be thinking about what you want to do to protect whoever your heirs are going to be. And that's great information. That's good, especially when you have, like other family members involved. It becomes a little bit more complicated, but nothing that can't be solved, right, Dan?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say, I think that in our case, my dad did the right move, and his intentions were to protect his assets from being passed on to maybe people he didn't want to be receiving them. So the trust was the right move, but we just want to make sure we're continuing in the right direction.
So, Dan, another thing I just want to point out is if you and the other beneficiaries are in agreement that certain changes should be made to the irrevocable trust, then there's a possibility that you could enter into what's called a non-judicial settlement agreement, where you don't even have to go to court, and you can agree to change and restructure the language of the trust. But it has to be done properly with the assent of all current and contingent beneficiaries.
Hey, Dan, I want
A non-judicial settlement agreement. That is. I'm going to look into that. That sounds good.
Good.
I appreciate you giving us a call today on the Sicilian Corner podcast. And, once again, I just want to explain to our listeners, we are on YouTube, on Facebook, and we're on demand. So you can watch us anytime, 24/7, right, Lo?
That's right.
So, Dan,
We're on
thank you very
CNBC
much for
right
giving us a call.
Thank you, Dan.
Keep up the good work. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. That was a good question,
It was.
and probably one that's more common than most people realize.
Yeah.
And, you want to take a proactive approach instead of letting the house cave in on your head, right?
Exactly.
It's way too late. The word probate, would you call that an ugly word?
Well, I mean, there are certainly ugly situations that arise out of the probate process.
Also,
Well, just the fact that the probate courts are overloaded, overworked, and that when you have just a will, your estate has to go through the probate process. So somebody leaves a will and they think that their family's going to be all set. That's just not true. A will has to be probated before any assets get transferred. That means that in order to file to open a probate, you have to file papers with the court, and you have to prepare an inventory of everything that's in the estate. And then in most cases, you have to publish notice in the newspaper. If you're in New Hampshire, in a lot of cases, you have to purchase a bond from an insurance company. And the probate process takes a little bit over a year, and it's expensive because most people hire a lawyer to do it.
okay, all the paperwork is done by an individual lawyer, not someone that's assigned like a probate lawyer, right? Someone who belongs to the state.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, either you try to do it on your own or you hire a lawyer.
Plus, whatever little assets you have and you worked hard all your life, you don't really want people to know what your business is or what you've done.
And that's correct. The probate process actually is, all of the paperwork is public record. So anybody who wants to know what you left can just go to the court and ask for the file and make copies of it. They also will know who's going to get it. So anyone who wants to perpetrate a scam or take advantage of somebody who's vulnerable can use that information to do that. So
I'm thinking ex-wife. She could really get pissed off if she's not left with anything. And all of a sudden you're contesting it, and that's just delaying everything, right? You know?
that's scary.
Yeah, that is very, 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 very scary. But the a will that's handwritten, does it stand up in court?
Well, the fact that it's handwritten, if it's legible, it doesn't really affect the validity of it.
Okay.
But wills have to be signed under certain state requirements.
All right.
For example, there has to be 2 witnesses and a notary, and then there has to be what's called a self-proving affidavit attached to the will. Basically having the witnesses swear that they observed the testator sign the will, and he or she appeared to be of sound mind and not
That's what I was
not
just
under,
gonna. That's the key, right?
yeah, not under any undue influence. Like nobody's kicking them under the table or pointing a gun at them when they're signing their will.
You know, the reason I'm bringing this up, and we come back. We're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
We come back. We have a case, Louis, right? Merv Griffin. And we're going to talk about Merv Griffin's estate, you and I, all right?
Sounds
You
good.
don't mind doing that with
Not
me?
at all.
All right. Guy was married, 8 times? We'll talk about it when we come back. So let's take a break, Lou.
Ciao, this is Esther of You, Me, and Sicily. I want to talk to you about Tommy Amin and the great staff at Butcher Boy Market. Families, foodies, and home chefs come together at Butcher Boy to talk good food and create traditions. They offer the best in quality cuts of beef, pork, lamb, poultry, and restaurant-style steaks and chops. Produce? All of their produce is hand-selected to complement any meal or even to make it your main course. Their deli serves fresh roast beef, turkey, and beautiful imported Italian cold cuts, cheeses, and antipasto. And don't forget the Butcher Boy Bakery, featuring sweet delectables from all over the state, as well as their very own bakery. That's Butcher Boy, where the secret to a great steak is, of course, the steak. Located at 1077 Osgood Street in North Andover, Massachusetts, in the Butcher Boy Plaza. Ciao!
This is Tom Zappala. Located in the heart of downtown Haverhill, the Haverhill Beef Company is a full-service, old-fashioned butcher shop and meat market that continues to be a valued family tradition since 1952. Peter and Monica Carboni's Haverhill Beef offers individualized service from an outstanding selection of marinated sirloin tips, homemade sausage, marinated chicken, and thick, juicy Chairman Reserve steaks. Your family deserves the best, so call Peter at 978-374-4795 or visit their website at www.haverhillbeef.com.
When you dine at Ristorante Melisse in Amesbury, Massachusetts, you feel at home while enjoying an authentic Italian dining experience not to be forgotten. From the appetizer to dessert, you won't regret your choice. Bring your cravings and appetites. They promise you won't leave hungry or without leftovers for the next day. Takeout and catering are also available. Give them a call or visit them online for the menu, online ordering, and reservations. RistoranteMelisse.com. That's RistoranteMolise.com or call 978-388-4844. Ristorante Melisse, where you're treated like family. Legacy Care Law Firm provides estate planning and elder law services to people in the greater Merrimack Valley and southern New Hampshire areas with offices in North Andover and Woburn, Massachusetts, as well as Nashua and Salem, New Hampshire. Discussing family and financial matters with an attorney can be intimidating, but our goal is to help you prepare for the future as you preserve your legacy. We help clients qualify for government medical benefits and ensure their estates are preserved for their families so they don't need to worry about their estate being wiped out by high nursing home expenses. Legacy Care Law Firm attorneys are here to support your journey toward a more secure financial future.
At Catadella Funeral Home, we reinvest in our business to provide your family with the best facilities. It begins with a beautifully landscaped exterior, parking for 250 vehicles, and a comfortable and inviting access to our renovated interior. Funerals can be costly, so you should review and compare plans to make sure you receive services that are fairly priced. I invite you to experience the Catadella difference in cost, facility, and service.
Catadella's honoring and celebrating the lives of the people we loved, providing exceptional care since 1929.
Italian artisan cuisine combines simple, fresh ingredients with time-honored preparation to create an incredible culinary experience. At Tuscan Kitchen, located in Salem's historic Depot District, talented chefs prepare everything in-house from scratch for all to see. Guests enjoy their meal literally in our kitchen as food is prepared right in front of you. Wood ovens burn from morning till night, roasting vegetables, baking bread, and firing delightful thin-crust pizzas. Prime steaks are seared on a wood grill. A rotisserie slowly roasts marinated whole chickens and lamb, while a pasta maker creates fresh fettuccine. More than just artisan cuisine, Tuscan Kitchen features the wine bar, live entertainment, weekly wine tastings, and elegant private dining and event space. Call 603-952-4875 or visit TuscanKitchen.com to make a reservation and learn more about the culinary adventure that awaits. In Italy, cooking is an art form. Tuscan Kitchen. Experience artisan Italian.
Orthopedics Northeast and Essex Orthopedics have joined forces as Mobility Bone and Joint Institute to bring improved access and outstanding medical care. While our name has changed, our dedication to exceptional care remains the same as it has for the past 30 years. Same location, 16 Pelham Road, Salem, New Hampshire.
This is Cindy,
and Mike Kunstler,
owners and operators of Four Oaks Country Club and Grazie Italian Restaurant in Drake, Massachusetts.
Grazie Italian Restaurant is the hidden gem of the Merrimack Valley.
Why is that?
We have an incredible chef, Oscar Figueroa.
In the words of local famous chef and restaurant owner Lydia Shire,
Oscar thrives on hard work.
He is capable and gifted.
No one makes better food. Scallops, seared to perfection.
House-made ravioli with farm-fresh local corn.
And buttery, tender, lazy man's lobster, just to name a few.
You have to come experience Grazie Italian Restaurant for yourself.
Grazie Italian Restaurant, located at Four Oaks Country Club, 80 Meadow Creek Drive in Drake, Massachusetts.
Hope to see you soon.
Hope to see you soon. Well, anyway, we're sitting here in the studio, the Sicilian Corner podcast, and like I said, today's a serious show. Show that's got a lot of information, and I hope you're taking some notes along the way. Our guest, Attorney Dan DeBruyckere, Legacy Care Law Offices, and I always look forward to having Dan on because he's a pleasure. Before we went to break, I mentioned Larry King, and I believe Larry King was married. Oh gosh, I think it was 8 times maybe. He married one woman twice, and he left a handwritten will, and of course, his latest wife was left out of the will, or something similar to that, and she contested it, and it could turn out to be a horror show. So you're better off. A trust really takes all the questions basically out of leaving an estate, doesn't it?
It sure does. It takes it from being a probate process to being a contract that you sign basically during your lifetime, stating that what you want to happen with your property when you pass away or when you become incapacitated. And a lot of people don't consider what happens when you lose your cognitive ability, like with a stroke or dementia.
And that can happen overnight.
And you know what we've seen in the past, in many cases that happens, then it's too late to do anything, because once you lose your cognitive ability, you can't sign papers. And there are things that we can do to protect assets.
Where does the executor of an estate come in? Can they act on your behalf to sign papers or not?
That's correct. Yeah. Well, if it's a trust, it will be a successor trustee that acts just like an executor would act. Or even during your lifetime, if you have a trust and you've named a successor trustee and you lose your cognitive ability, your successor trustee can take over and manage your affairs for you and help to prevent the loss of certain assets.
Assets. When I say assets and you say assets, this buy down number that is associated with Medicaid, I'm a little bit confused about it, to be honest with you. I mean, I look at the numbers and it said if you have assets, Lou, like what's it, 2,500 then?
Correct. If you're
In cash?
unmarried, that's
If you're
correct.
unmarried, 2,500. Jesus, you're destitute. 2,500. What the hell are you going to do? You're going to go out to eat? I mean, that's pretty high. You know, how you have a 5-year look back period. Would you mind telling our listening audience about that?
Do we have a couple of hours? But let me give you the nutshell version. All right.
We need a couple of hours.
Yeah,
for
we
this
do.
show.
You really do. But first, I want to say what Mike is talking about is Medicaid planning. Medicaid planning is a process of setting things up so that if you ever need long-term care in a nursing home, that some or all of your assets can be preserved for your family or your beneficiaries. And in most cases, if you're unmarried, as Mike referred to, if something happens where you need long-term care in a nursing home, which, by the way, costs an average of $15,000 a month right now. 15,000 a month in this area, especially with memory care issues. So, and if that happens, somebody's got to pay for it. Now, if you have assets and you apply for Medicaid to pay for it, they're going to tell you that you're over-resourced, meaning you have more resources than the limit allows. And if you're unmarried, Mike mentioned it's $2,500.
How about your primary residence, Dan? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you
Is
go
that
right ahead.
included or not?
If you're unmarried, the primary residence is included. And sometimes if you put on your application, you intend to return home, which most people don't, then what Medicaid will do is they'll give you the coverage, but they'll put a lien on the home so that if you ever sell it, they get paid back for everything they
So
pay.
it's $15,000 a month, you're saying?
That's correct.
So it's $180,000 a year, and
That's
they're gonna. So you're in the hospital for 2 years. That's $360,000 they're gonna take from your house
Correct.
if you go to if you pass.
That's correct. So
Any of that exempt?
not for an unmarried person. For a married person, if what they call the community spouse.
What if you were married and you lost your spouse?
Then you're considered unmarried.
You know, they have these blow up dolls.
That doesn't help.
It
Still
doesn't
get
help.
50%.
I mean,
in divorce.
you look at Massachusetts, for instance. I mean, I thought there was $1,081,000 that was a tax exempt, and that's not.
Well, you're talking about two different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise
You're
me.
talking about the inheritance tax, right?
Ah,
That's different from Medicaid,
Medicaid.
eligibility.
you got to have nothing for Medicaid.
Well, in many cases, but the point I want to make is that example that I gave you of having to spend down everything before being eligible for Medicaid. That's if you do nothing, okay? If you go to see a qualified elder law attorney
Somebody like.
and you talk about your options, come to one of our seminars or somebody else's seminar and learn about the things that you need to, the choices you need to make.
Okay.
And you do this right, when you do need long-term care, then you won't lose all of your assets.
But there's a waiting period, isn't there?
If in some cases there is a 5-year look-back period that would prevent you from having protection. Now, it's not
Okay.
really a waiting period. What the 5-year look-back period is an accounting period. It's a period of time where when you apply for Medicaid, they will look back 5 years to see what you did. And if you did something that
You're trying to hide.
that creates an eligibility penalty, then you're going to be penalized for a certain number of months. Let's say you gave away $85,000 to your kids.
Lou, are you paying attention?
I am.
Uh,
Yes.
Let's say you gave away $85,000 to your kids because you figured you didn't want to lose it when you applied for Medicaid. And then you apply for Medicaid, and they're going to look back at your bank statements for 5 years, and they see that you gave that $85,000 away. Well, then what they're going to use is a regional coefficient. So right now it's about $8,500 per month. So if you gave away $85,000, you're going to be penalized 10 months eligibility. So they're going to say you've been approved for Medicaid, but there's a 10-month period that you have to self-pay before we're going to pay anything because you made that gift. That's what the 5-year look-back period is all about.
Okay.
However, there are some things that you can do that are not, they're not penalizing events. And that's one of the things that a good elder law attorney will look at. The problem with this is you can't open a book and read what that is because it applies differently to different people. The Medicaid law has exemptions, and there are exceptions to the exemptions, and there are qualifying criteria to being able to use some of these exemptions. So you really need to sit down with a qualified elder law attorney and have them advise you about what exemptions and strategies under the Medicaid law would apply to you and what you could do to protect assets. Now, in most cases, when people come to our firm for Medicaid planning, they do not end up needing an irrevocable trust to do what they want to accomplish, and they don't have to be concerned about the 5-year look-back period because we find that exemptions and strategies apply to them.
Okay. Just a quick question. If you have a house and probably 90 or more % of all the people, most of the value, their net worth is tied up in their house, I would assume, right?
In many cases.
Yeah, in many cases. So you have a house that's worth, say, $700,000, which is kind of a startup home right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. But say you had a mortgage of, say, $300,000. Could you take that $300,000 out of your savings and pay off the mortgage so the house is completely paid for and not be considered trying to hide money?
Yeah, that's one of the strategies we actually use.
You do?
In some cases, paying down a mortgage or putting a new roof on the house or putting a new boiler in the house. Anything that you can do to get value back for your money is not a penalizing event.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good thing because when you go to pass down the assets to your children, at least it's clean. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's great. The biggest problem that you hear the most of when somebody walks into your office, what is the biggest, what are they asking you? What's their number one question?
More than 90% of the time, people come in and they're concerned about what's going to happen to everything they've worked so hard to build up if they need long-term care, if they have to go into a nursing home. What can we do to minimize what will be lost so that they can protect it for their beneficiaries?
That's the number one.
That's the number one concern people have.
And that's a common sense question too.
Yeah. Another concern is what's going to happen if I leave assets to one of my children and that child goes through a divorce. Is there a way of protecting that inheritance so my child doesn't lose part of it in a divorce? That's another big concern. In some cases, when we have what we call blended families, where two people get together and they get married and they have children from previous relationships.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're concerned about putting a trust together as a unit about what's going to happen when one passes away, and will the other still honor your wishes for part of it to go to your children. So we have ways of protecting that concern in a trust as well.
Dan, if there's a couple and they have two children, a boy and a girl, say, the girl is very common sense, very smart, does things by the book. She's no problem. But the boy, the son, he's into drugs. He's into, his work habits aren't the greatest. And you look at it and you say, well, geez, if they were to liquidate their house and liquidate their estate, there's a lot of money. I mean, it's probably $1.5 million, $1.25 million. If you gave this kid $560,000, say, he'd go through that money like in a matter of 6 or 7 months. How can you set it up that he only gets a portion every year? Is there a way of doing that?
So And that's a very good point, because today with the divorce rate 62% and the prevalence of substance abuse and everything else that's going on in society, we never in our trusts call for an outright distribution. Like Dan, the caller earlier who called up, the trustee's a beneficiary of. He doesn't have his money outright in his pocket. He has his money still inside that trust. That's called a beneficiary trust, a subtrust. Okay. And there's no reason not to leave your inheritance to your beneficiaries in a subtrust. It's not that complicated. And essentially what happens is we can draft the subtrusts differently for different beneficiaries. In your example, where the daughter had a good head on her shoulder, we would create a subtrust for her where she could access her inheritance if she wanted to. But so long as she leaves it in mom and dad's trust, she has some protections. Okay.
How about the boy? You can set up a dollar amount after their death, after their demise, that he would only get a certain portion every year.
So there are a lot of creative strategies for what we call the spendthrift subtrust. Sometimes we would do that. We would do what's called a staggered distribution, so that the beneficiary only gets so much per year each year. Sometimes we have a person in the family who can exercise discretion and who has absolute discretion about what that beneficiary gets and when he gets it. A number of different strategies. We even do things with insurance companies where a client will say, I want my son is going to get about $500,000. I'd like to see that last him for 10 years. So we'll put language in the trust stating that my trustee shall purchase an annuity from at least an AA-rated insurance company that would provide for distribution, quarterly payments over a period of 10 years. And they have spendthrift annuities that he couldn't go to one of these scammers and just get a small piece of money for his interest in his annuity. So it's called a non-alienable annuity.
It's easy for you to say.
I know.
Hey, Dan, I'm up against another break. This is great. I love this kind of stuff. But guys, please, we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to come back. We're here till noontime. Give us a call, 978-659-0072. You have a question? Ask. Roger Trudell says, this is great information.
Thank you,
Good to
Roger.
hear from you, Roger. And we're going to take a break right now, Lou, and we'll be right back.
Ciao, this is Esther of You, Me, and Sicily. I want to talk to you about Tommy Amin and the great staff at Butcher Boy Market. Families, foodies, and home chefs come together at Butcher Boy to talk good food and create traditions. They offer the best in quality cuts of beef, pork, lamb, poultry, and restaurant-style steaks and chops. Produce? All of their produce is hand-selected to complement any meal or even to make it your main course. Their deli serves fresh roast beef, turkey, and beautiful imported Italian cold cuts, cheeses, and antipasto. And don't forget the Butcher Boy Bakery, featuring sweet delectables from all over the state, as well as their very own bakery. That's Butcher Boy, where the secret to a great steak is, of course, the steak. Located at 1077 Osgood Street in North Andover, Massachusetts, in the Butcher Boy Plaza. Ciao!
This is Tom Zappala. Located in the heart of downtown Haverhill, the Haverhill Beef Company is a full-service, old-fashioned butcher shop and meat market that continues to be a valued family tradition since 1952. Peter and Monica Carboni's Haverhill Beef offers individualized service from an outstanding selection of marinated sirloin tips, homemade sausage, marinated chicken, and thick, juicy Chairman Reserve steaks. Your family deserves the best, so call Peter at 978-374-4795 or visit their website at www.haverhillbeef.com.
Sisters and co-owners Antoinetta and Elisa brought their family authentic Italian recipes from Molise, Italy, and a warm and welcoming dining experience to its customers at Restaurant Restaurante Molise. The combination of their meals made from natural, homemade, fresh ingredients and your time with family and friends together at dinner time is unmatched. Located in Market Square in the heart of Amesbury, they're open for dinner Tuesday through Sunday from 3 to 9 p.m. and are available for private parties during off hours. For reservations, call them at 978-388-4844. That's 978-388-4844. Legacy Care Law Firm provides estate planning and elder law services to people in the greater Merrimack Valley and southern New Hampshire areas, with offices in North Andover and Woburn, Massachusetts, as well as Nashua and Salem, New Hampshire. Discussing family and financial matters with an attorney can be intimidating, but our goal is to help you prepare for the future as you preserve your legacy. We help clients qualify for government medical benefits and ensure their estates are preserved for their families so they don't need to worry about their estate being wiped out by high nursing home expenses. Legacy Care Law Firm attorneys are here to support your journey toward a more secure financial future.
At Catadella Funeral Home, we reinvest in our business to provide your family with the best facilities. It begins with a beautifully landscaped exterior, parking for 250 vehicles, and a comfortable and inviting access to our renovated interior. Funerals can be costly, so you should review and compare plans to make sure you receive services that are fairly priced. I invite you to experience the Catadella difference in cost, facility, and service.
Catadella's, honoring and celebrating the lives of the people we loved, providing exceptional care since 1929.
Italian artisan cuisine combines simple, fresh ingredients with time-honored preparation to create an incredible culinary experience. At Tuscan Kitchen, located in Salem's historic Depot District, talented chefs prepare everything in-house from scratch for all to see. Guests enjoy their meal literally in our kitchen as food is prepared right in front of you. Wood ovens burn from morning till night, roasting vegetables, baking bread, and firing delightful thin-crust pizzas. Prime steaks are seared on a wood grill. A rotisserie slowly roasts marinated whole chickens and lamb, while a pasta maker creates fresh fettuccine. More than just artisan cuisine, Tuscan Kitchen features the wine bar, live entertainment, weekly wine tastings, and elegant private dining and event space. Call 603-952-4875 or visit TuscanKitchen.com to make a reservation and learn more about the culinary adventure that awaits. In Italy, cooking is an art form. Tuscan Kitchen. Experience artisan Italian.
Orthopedics Northeast and Essex Orthopedics have joined forces as Mobility Bone and Joint Institute to bring improved access and outstanding medical care. While our name has changed, our dedication to exceptional care remains the same as it has for the past 30 years. Same location, 16 Pelham Road, Salem, New Hampshire.
This is Cindy,
And Mike Kunstler.
owners and operators of Four Oaks Country Club and Grazie Italian Restaurant in Drake, Massachusetts.
Grazie Italian Restaurant is the hidden gem of the Merrimack Valley.
Why is that?
We have an incredible chef, Oscar Figueroa.
In the words of local famous chef and restaurant owner Lydia Shire,
Oscar thrives on hard work.
he is capable and gifted.
No one makes better food. Scallops, seared to perfection,
House-made ravioli with farm-fresh local corn.
and buttery tender lazy man's lobster, just to name a few.
You have to come experience Grazie Italian Restaurant for yourself.
Grazie Italian Restaurant, located at Four Oaks Country Club, 80 Meadow Creek Drive in Drake, Massachusetts. Hope to see you soon.
And we are back with Attorney Dan DeBruyckere, Legacy Care. Dan, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you, and I'm going to turn you loose because I know you're never lost for words. And I like that about you, you know. Why don't you just take over the show and talk about anything and everything that you'd like to do and why you're going to encourage people to look into providing care for their estate.
So it's open mic time, huh?
Well,
Okay.
open Dan
But
time. I call it open. It's open Dan time.
I promise I won't sing. So
Thank you.
So, you know, one of the things that's very important if you're considering an estate plan with a trust is that the trust is funded. Now, the word funding when it comes to estate planning confuses a lot of people because in the English language, when you use the word funding to get something funded means I'm going to get the money to buy something, right? Or I'm going to spend money on something. And that's usually what funding means. But in the estate planning world, funding means getting the assets into the trusts. So just remember that. When you hear funding, it means getting the assets into the trust. And it's very important because if you have a trust to protect you or protect your assets, if the asset is not in the trust, then the asset will not have the protections of the trust. And I see that quite often where people have a trust prepared and, mom and dad pass away and the kids come into us with the trust and they're pretty comfortable they're not going to have to go to probate court, and we have to break the news to them that you still have to go through probate because there were assets that were not included in the trust. The assets were not funded into the trust. Now, before I tell you how that happens, I want to tell you what it means to fund assets into a trust. Let's say you have a bank account. We give you the paperwork you need to go to your local bank and have your bank account retitled into the name of the trust. Let's say you have a brokerage account with Fidelity or Edward Jones or one of those financial institutions. Well, we work with them to fill out the forms to have your brokerage account, your stock account, transferred into the name of the trust. So now instead of that account being in your name, it's in the name of your trust. Let's say you have an IRA or a 401k. Well, those accounts have to stay in your name. So what we do to connect them to the trust, which is a form of funding, is we change the beneficiaries of those accounts so that first of all, if you're married, you still want to have your spouse as the primary beneficiary because there's a tax advantage. But the contingent beneficiary, if you're married, should be the trust. Insurance policies should be funded through the trust. Everything you have should be in the trust. Your real estate, we prepare a deed so that now the home is owned by the trust. Now, that doesn't mean you're losing control over it. That just means that now all of these assets are under contract. Remember, we said a trust is a contract. So all of these assets are now under contract. You have full control in most cases. If it's a revocable trust, you have full control of your assets while you're alive, just as though they were in your name. But when you pass, there's no court involvement. The trust takes over and the assets pass to the beneficiary without them ever having to go to court. So, did you have a question? You look like you have a question.
Well, I was going to make a comment. I have never seen in all the years that I've worked with Lou this attentive. He's been listening and watching.
He's taking notes.
Lou, you have a question?
I do, and it's an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I love those.
Basic trust. I'm putting my home in to protect it from nursing home care and things like that. Basic costs. What is it going to cost me to do that?
Oh, I'm going to give you the famous lawyer answer.
Yeah.
It depends.
It depends. It's the answer to everything. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I understand that different trusts have different complexities.
Yeah, sure. But it's not just the trust. It's the whole estate plan.
Yeah.
The trust alone does not give you the protection in all cases. For example, we're talking about protection during our lifetime as well as when we go into a nursing home, or if a spouse goes into a nursing home, or if one spouse dies and the other spouse goes into a nursing home. Do we want the children to have the ability to protect those assets at the same time? So that's a whole estate plan, which includes all of the documents, powers of attorney, healthcare documents, wills, property agreements, a lot of documents. And, it could range anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. And I know some people gasp when they hear that, but I like to tell people that the number one reason why estate plans fail, and I've seen a lot of them that fail, is poorly drafted documents. And the reason we get poorly drafted documents or trusts that are not funded is because you get what you pay for. Yep. And I'll promise you, you will get what you pay for. And that the problem is a lot of people shop and they shop for the lowest price, but they don't know what they're not getting.
Right.
And, we were talking earlier about funding and what happens when your trust is not funded. And we talked about how to fund the trust, but how does that happen? If you pay a professional to prepare a trust for you, how does it happen that it doesn't work because it's not funded?
That should be prominent advice, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a process. It's a lot of work. It's like buying a brand new automobile and then having them tell you how to put an engine in it. And funding is just like that, because if the trust is not funded, it doesn't work. And in many cases, clients pick up their documents and they're given an instruction sheet on how to fund the trust. Now, let me tell you about not just us, but a lot, good law firms do this, is we don't just have one meeting. Over the years, I even think since we did it for you, we've developed even further. But we have a 5-meeting process now if we're going to set up an estate plan for you. And the first meeting is when you come in, and we decide whether this is a good fit for you and whether you're comfortable going forward. And we get a lot of information. We get the information we need to design your plan. The next meeting is a week later, where you come in and you bring back all of your financial documents, your bank statements, your account statements, and then we talk to you again about what you've chosen, who's gonna act in your place. Then there's another meeting about 2 weeks after that, where now we've been working on your estate plan, and we've got an outline of a draft, and we go over the whole thing with you again, because by that time you've been thinking for 3 weeks, you have more questions, right? And also, usually what happens is people come walking in with, I didn't give you this statement, I didn't give you that statement, right?
I can understand that.
And that happens because people are so busy.
Yeah.
Then the 4th meeting is with me. I do all of what we call the comprehensive review meetings. And that's when I look at all the bank statement. We've created a funding spreadsheet, and I go over each account with you, and I tell you what that's going to look like when it's funded. And then I have you think hard. Now, have we missed any accounts? Do you perhaps have an insurance policy or an old IRA that we haven't talked about yet? That way we make sure we get everything into the picture. Then we work on preparing all of the forms for you. And the meeting after that is when you come in to sign your documents, and we'll have all the forms filled out to fund your assets into the trust. And that's the way it should be done. It should be done over those 5 meetings. We call it a 6-step process, because the 6th step is a lifetime of communication where we send emails and newsletters to our existing clients.
And like I said before, I am a customer, I am a client, and you're constantly in the loop. And the key to this, Louis, like for someone like yourself who has not set up a program to protect what you have, is to go to the free seminars. I can't emphasize that enough, because that really got me thinking. And the more I thought, the more I liked the idea. And I went to another seminar, and that kind of pushed me over the edge there. And it was the best thing that I could have done. And to this day, I have peace of mind. If something was to happen to Mikey today, tomorrow, whatever the case might be, everything is clear cut in writing and legalized. I have a good friend of mine, and it just went online, and he wanted to make sure that his assets were dispersed the way he wanted. He went online, he printed something up online and filled it out. Well, I don't know how much credit that's going to have, but I mean, you spend $100 or $120. Guess what?
Do I have time for a quick story?
Yeah, tell me.
So about 1.5 years ago, I worked with a family that while Dad was alive, he did just that. His only asset was a home, and he wanted to make sure that if he went into a nursing home, his kids would get his home when he passed away. So he went online and he downloaded, he read on the internet that if you have an irrevocable trust, that your kids will get the assets. Well, Dad lived several years. He never had to go into a nursing home. And when he died, the kids were able to sell the house, and they were all happy. They thought this was great. Dad did a good job, until they filed their taxes. And when they filed their taxes, they were told they owed over $100,000 in capital gains taxes. And one of the kids was pretty astute, and he said, no, I read that if I receive a home that's appreciated, that's gone up in value, and it's through some sort of an inheritance, even if it's a trust, that it gets what's called a step up in basis. But the trust has to provide for what's called inclusion, and I don't have time to go into what that means, but basically this trust didn't. And there was no step up in basis. These kids had to pay over $100,000. Remember, I said what I said, you get what you pay for. They got what they paid for.
That's a very good example.
They got $100 worth, and unfortunately, they ended up spending $100,000 because, you know, every word, every sentence, every paragraph in that trust is important. It's a contract.
Well, you know something, like I said, I hope some people that have been listening to us, if nothing else, if it raises questions,
Yep.
and you start thinking in the back of your head, and you're going to think about it for the next couple of days, do the next step. And I'll be honest with you, I recommend, it doesn't cost you a dime. Where can you go and it doesn't cost you a dime? Plus, you're going to get refreshments.
Yeah, no dinners. We don't serve dinner, but we do provide some appetizers.
So, and like I said, you're gonna get an awful lot out of it. Dan, I can't thank you enough for coming on with us. And trust me, it will not be another year.
Okay.
You know, in 6 months or so, because it's hard to get together with you and our schedule working with his schedule.
Sure.
I mean, we try very hard to make it work, but you're providing quite a service. And like you said, you're going to get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And that's important. Listen, it's October. It's Italian Heritage Month, guys.
That's right.
Go to your favorite Italian restaurant. Give them some business. Have an extra glass of wine. Charge it to Dan.
There you go.
He's all set, you know. But anyway, hey, thank you very much.
My last name is spelled Lomazzo.
Hey, I resemble that.
There you go.
Boy, Dan.
All right. Listen, we have to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody. Come back next week. We got a great show planned for you, and it's going to be in regards to the Italian-American Alliance. And we're going to have the Vice President joining us here in the studio. Take care, everyone. Be safe. And for the people in Florida, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Take care.
Take care.